If you haven't watched part 1 yet, I highly recommend you do before watching this video. But if you can't be bothered, here's a quick recap to bring you up to date. I'll try and keep it brief, but there's a lot to unpack, so if you don't want to hear all that yap, skip here to begin part 2. Thanks for watching. In the beginning, before the birth of our universe, there was only the ether and the dark ether. The keepers who inhabited the ether formed the summoning key, using it to build their paradise, Agartha. A small group of keepers tapped into the dark ether and were corrupted by its evil nature, becoming known as the Apothicans. The two factions waged war for the realm of Agartha, and in the end, the Apothicans are defeated and banished to the dark ether. In a desperate last effort, the Apothicans hide a device of great destruction in a newly formed dimension before banishment. During their exile, they send a substance of the dark ether known as Element 115 through wormholes to Earth's dimension, hoping humanity would one day use it to break the barrier between dimensions. The Apothicans breach humanity's realm in the 1300s, but 4 staff-wielding heroes known as Primus defeat them and banish them back into the dark ether. In the 1800s, a man named Jebediah Brown is visited by the Keepers in a dream. They ask him to build the Agarthan device, an artifact that neither they or the Apothicans are capable of building for some reason. Being only a 19th century common folk, Jebediah was unable to acquire the components for the device. In the 1930s, German scientist Dr. Ludwig Maxis forms Group 935 for research on the recently discovered Element 115. He invites Dr. Edward Richtofen aboard Group 935 and births his daughter Samantha in the same decade. Through their experiments with 115, Maxis and Richtofen discover the possibilities of teleportation and reanimating the dead with the element. Maxis plans to do business with Nazi Germany to expand, whereas Richtofen opposes, believing it will be the downfall of the organisation. While Maxis negotiates with the Yazis, Richtofen conducts the first human teleportation test using himself as the subject. Richtofen teleports to the moon by mistake and interacts with the ether pyramid created by the Apothicans. The pyramid corrupts Richtofen, and he returns to Group 935 with plans to build a facility on the moon, keeping the pyramid a secret from Maxis. Multiple 935 facilities are established through the funding of Nazi Germany. Maxis travels to the Kino facility to continue with undead experimentation, and Richtofen travels to the Siberian facility to work with Dr. Yena while having Samantha in his care. 3 test subjects arrive to the Siberian facility for testing, these being Nikolai, Takeo, and Pablo Marinas. Richtofen plans to extract the souls from the subjects for his own bidding, but accidentally kills Pablo after removing his spleen. Pablo is dumped into the Tunguska River, unaware that he's still alive, and remains hidden within the facility. Tank Dempsey is captured at Verrucht after a failed rescue mission of Peter McCain and is transferred to the Siberian facility to replace Pablo. Richtofen extracts the souls of the 3 subjects and his own to form the elemental shard. Maxis orders Richtofen to send the shard to Division 9 and return to Darice to discuss his loyalty to Group 935. Richtofen finds out Maxis has trashed all his projects, and he plans to kill him and his daughter. Richtofen strikes a deal with the Americans and Soviets in secrecy for his immunity and for 935's work to continue post-World War II. Richtofen is notified that the pyramid is ready for him, and he enacts his plan to end Maxis and Samantha. During one of the teleportation tests, Maxis teleports Samantha's dog, which deforms it into a hellhound. Samantha witnesses this and rushes into the teleporter, with Maxis soon following her. Richtofen closes the teleporter and activates it with both of them inside. Samantha teleports to Griffin Station, where she enters the pyramid, becoming corrupted by the dark ether, while Maxis teleports to a realm known as the Crazy Place, where he learns to fuse with electricity. Richtofen travels to the moon and brings Maxis back to lull Samantha out of the pyramid. Maxis convinces her out of the pyramid and instructs her to kill everyone at the facility, before taking his own life and fusing into the technology of Griffin Station. Richtofen manages to escape back to Earth and awakens the 3 test subjects to help him save the Earth. They travel to Shinonuma to collect Richthofen's journal before returning to Doris to teleport to the moon. But Richtofen's Wonderwolf overloads the teleporter and sends them through time from 1945 to the Kino facility in 1963. Richtofen's journal is left behind at Doris, and Ultimus must retrieve it before confronting Samantha. Post-World War II era. November 5th, 1945. Group 935, as we know it, is disbanded. The US and Soviet military carry on with the extraction of German scientists for their motives. January 19th, 1946. After seizing the Group 935 facilities, the US and Soviet military share their findings, but each faction withholds an item of great importance upon its discovery. The Soviets discover Richtofen's journal at the Doris facility, while the US discovered the elemental shard at the Rising Sun facility. January 20th, 1946. Major George Sawyer, the US overseer of Project Stapler, reports the project's success, as over 40 former Group 935 scientists are employed to the US alone. January 27th, 1946. Several ex-935 scientists are hired by the Pentagon with plans to replicate Group 935's work. Among these scientists is Dr. Schuster, tasked with replicating 935's matter transference device. January 29th, 1946. The Soviet Union began employing their extracted scientists. Among them is Harvey Yena, who continues his efforts as a spy for the US and relays the Soviets' research back to the States. The Soviets work with Yena to form the Union's own scientific research group, known as the Ascension Group, to continue 115 research. Yena relays the contents of Richtofen's journal back to the US to give them the upper hand in the Cold War that is brewing. July 6, 1946. After a year of hiding amongst the abandoned Siberian facility, Pablo Marinas comes to the realization that he might be stuck in some kind of pocket dimension that he woke up in at the bottom of the Tunguska River. Every attempt he makes to escape the facility into the Siberian tundra, a fog surrounds him. And once he emerges from the fog, he is brought right back to the facility. Pablo gives up on escaping and begins to believe there is purpose to his confinement to the facility. He begins to wander through the empty facility, eventually discovering the documents on the Agarthan device and its instructions to build it. Pablo is now obsessed with the visions he had while imprisoned at Eagle's Nest. The visions become more lucid and consistent as the days go by. Pablo believes the Agarthan device could be the key to manifest himself into those visions. The only problem for Pablo, though, is that he is missing the last important ingredient to complete the device, the blood of an elder god. Don't ask how he has an elemental shard on him, that shit is beyond me. Pablo continues to send radio transmissions out from the facility, in hopes that someone will one day respond and help him. Yeah, turns out he wasn't chilling for the next 20 years. He's losing the plot just after one. My bad, Pablo. Cold War and Space Race era. June 27th, 1947. Schuster reports of his work and experience with Group 935 to the Pentagon. He is left puzzled as they disregard his warnings of Samantha, believing it to be a hoax or conspiracy. July 29, 1952. The Pentagon began experimentation with their own reanimated subjects. May 12, 1955. The US established a facility next to the Element 115 deposit at Groom Lake, referred to as the Groom Lake Facility. Experiments from the Pentagon and materials extracted from Division 9, which included the elemental shard, are transferred to the Groom Lake facility for further research. The management of the facility is placed under CIA Station Chief Cornelius Purnell. August 2nd, 1955. The space race begins between the US and the Soviets. Each faction is determined to reach the abandoned Griffin station to claim it for themselves. The Soviets allocate the Baikonur Cosmodrome spaceport to the Ascension Group to ensure their success in reaching Griffin Station. October 19th, 1955. Two Soviet scientists joined the Ascension Group program, these being Dr. Anton Gersh and Dr. Yuri Zavoysky. Anton Gersh would join Harvey Yena in becoming a co-founder of the Ascension Group. The group's main priority is to acquire access to Griffin Station before their rivals in the US. Gersh is tasked on research for the Soviets' own matter transference device. April 25th, 1956. Two British explorers named Brock and Gary discovered the fabled Shangri-La after a 3-month expedition. Brock believes that the myth of Agartha is real and that Shangri-La is the gateway to access it. They find the village to be empty of any inhabitants, yet filled with structures and equipment used for mining. They discover that the now absent natives have been mining for a mysterious ore to please a deity that fell from the heavens over 25 years ago. Eventually, they make their way to the shrine in the centre of the village. Brock observes some unfinished carvings before pressing a button that causes an eclipse to occur over Shangri-La. The two of them are suddenly ambushed by the natives, who have been turned undead due to the years of exposure to the ores from the mines. Brock manages to escape by hiding in a crawl space within the shrine, while Gary gets the Diddy treatment. Brock makes his way through the shrine's labyrinth until he reaches an altar with a name etched into its base and a glowing stone perched on top. Upon reaching for the stone, time itself is reverted, and Brock is taken back to when he and Gary first discovered Shangri-La. The two explorers have no recollection of the events just past and make their way to the village in search for the gateway to Agartha. Brock and Gary have unknowingly entered a temporal loop upon the activation of the eclipse. They are stuck there forever in a never-ending cycle. Undisclosed date 1957. Gersh manages to construct an MTP for the Ascension Group, but he finds great difficulty in calibrating coordinates to reach Griffin Station. The Soviets continue efforts with rockets and space travel. July 18th, 1957. Cornelius Purnell discovers Richtofen's request to the Soviets, which included a spacesuit and an aircraft known as a lunar lander. He reports his findings to General Sawyer. Undisclosed date 1958. Dr. Gersh and Yena receive a mysterious transmission from the abandoned 935 Siberian facility. The voice on the transmission offers them the solution to their struggles in the space race through the construction of the Agarthan device, and in return, he asks them to retrieve the blood of an ancient elder god that lies at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and then transport it to the facility. Once the transmission ends, Gersh is skeptical that such a device could exist, but Yena reassures its potential, mentioning his history with Richtofen at the Siberian facility. Yena and Gersh discuss the worth and risk of such an expensive expedition. Ultimately, Gersh convinces Yena to set out and obtain the blood. A few weeks later, Yena returns from his expedition with vials of the Elder God's blood. After inspecting the blood, Yena and Gersh become aware of its abnormal properties. Yena describes the blood to have a lifelike fluidity, almost as if it has a life of its own. Gersh worries the US may intercept them on their way to the Siberian facility, and changes his mind on the agreement they had with the stranger on the radio. He instead wishes to keep the blood for the Ascension Group's experiments. Yena tries to convince Gersh to continue with the plan and deliver the blood to the facility, probably to hand the blood over to the US, but he eventually lets Gersh win his tantrum, and they begin to study the blood. After months of studying the blood, Yena realizes this blood is some real freaky shit. He discovers that the blood uses the negative space between its molecules as a source of energy, which allows it to move and shapeshift on its own. Yena discusses his findings with Gersh, and they come to the conclusion that this negative space that the blood occupies does not exist in our dimension, and that it could even be some sort of black hole. Man, Jason Blundell was smoking that good shit when he was writing this part of the story for real.
I'm a sucker for medieval castles.
Yena theorizes that the blood may have been the true organism in control of the Elder God, with the body being more of a vessel for the blood. Gersh and Yena experiment on the primates used for rocket testing. They inject small doses of the blood into primates with intentions of conditioning them for space travel. They discover that the blood gives the primates rejuvenating abilities, making them stronger and more resilient. The blood is capable of bringing a mortally wounded monkey back to health in mere minutes. But there is an alarmingly negative side effect. The injections cause the primates to become aggressively hostile every time without fail. Yena believes this side effect will be manageable and worth the trade-off if it will accelerate the rocket testing phase. Gersh wishes to mass-produce a serum using the blood for weapons research and begins his planning. Yuri agrees but warns Gersh that they should be careful with the blood. He has concerns that the blood seems to be reacting in anger to the testing and probing, almost as if it has sentience. June 3rd, 1959. The Pentagon developed their own matter transference prototype, and teleportation experimentation begins. March 11th, 1961. Purnell meets with Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara to convince him of combining efforts to give the Groom Lake facility the funding it deserves. He implies that with the funding, Groom Lake can properly mine the materials and expand experimentation. Purnell proposes that they establish Broken Arrow, a program he's been conjuring up during his time at the facility that can better utilize 115's full potential. McNamara rejects his claims with disinterest, leaving Purnell frustrated. Undisclosed date, 1961. At the Groom Lake facility, Cornelius Purnell becomes intrigued by the elemental shard he was tasked with keeping secured. He now spends most of his time studying and obsessing over the shard, unbeknownst to the CIA. June 4th, 1961. The Pentagon successfully linked their teleporter to the Groom Lake facility. They tasked Schuster to now link the teleporter to the abandoned Griffin station ASAP. Schuster tries to explain the difficulty of such a feat and that it could take years of calibrating, but nobody wants to hear any of that, and they give him 2 weeks before they begin testing. March 15th, 1962. Using Group 935's research, the Ascension Group developed their own variants of the 115 infused elixirs, these being Stamina and PhD Flopper. March 23rd, 1962. Sawyer writes the demands of Richtofen from his assistants with Operation Stapler, the most important being the construction of a polarization device, Robert J. Oppenheimer's unclean chalkboard, and a portrait of himself hung in the war room of the Pentagon. Valid request, to be fair. November 11th, 1962. Dr. Gersh begins work on Project Thunder at the Ascension facility. The main goal of the project being the development of a 115 infused weapon that would fire devastating blasts of compressed air. December 12th, 1962. After years of successful research with the Elder God blood, another project at the Ascension facility is initiated by Dr. Gersh, with the assistance of Yuri. This one would be referred to as Project Mercury, with its objective being the development of a device that creates mini black holes on command. This device uses the negative energy of the blood to form these black holes, making them temporary for strategic use, which is insane. February 23rd, 1963. Purnell discovers the existence of Samantha through Schuster. Schuster explains that all the major outbreaks that have occurred over the last 20 years can be traced back to her doing. Purnell is convinced and begins his own research on Samantha. Purnell hopes her proven existence will be the catalyst that changes McNamara's mind on funding Broken Arrow. Undisclosed date, June 1963. Dr. Schuster is assigned to work on undead experimentation, much to his displeasure. He meets with Pentagon scientist Dr. Lehman to review his progress on producing docile and submissive undead subjects. Dr. Lehman reveals he has made a major breakthrough from reading copies of Richtofen's journal, sent by Harvey Yena. He explains the process of vaporizing 115 into an inhalant that has much more effective results than the typical injections. Dr. Schuster is quite impressed until Dr. Lehman confesses he had used a live specimen for it to be inhaled. Although Schuster was shocked by Lehman's statement, he goes silent as he inspects the undead's yellow eyes. Undisclosed date, July 1963. Schuster and Lehman report to Sawyer on their success in the undead experimentation with the 115 gas. Sawyer wants to use the gas as a chemical weapon against the Soviets in hopes of ending the Cold War. This statement angers Lehman, and he snaps at Sawyer with questions about the original goal of building an undead army. Sawyer questions Lehman's sudden outburst with concern, but Schuster interrupts the conflict and informs Sawyer they will have the chemical ready in 6 weeks. Sawyer leaves, and Schuster confronts Lehman's behaviour. Lehman comes to his senses and apologises for his actions. He confesses he's been hearing voices ever since reading Richtofen's diary, but once Schuster leaves the room, Lehman smiles to himself, telling the voice that he still hears her. July 29th, 1963. After months of researching Samantha and the past undead outbreaks, Pennell drafts a report for Robert McNamara of the undead outbreaks that have occurred since 1945. Pennell hopes that the report will secure funding for Groom Lake and finally establish the Broken Arrow program. August 3rd, 1963. Schuster and Pennell conduct teleportation test 11 at Groom Lake with test subject Private Hastings. Schuster believes that his calibrations of the teleporter will transfer Hastings to Griffin Station, but the test is unsuccessful, as Hastings never confirms of his arrival and is never seen again. August 17, 1963. The Pentagon begin development of the Winter's Howl, a 115 infused weapon that fires a frost wave that surrounds its target in a coat of ice. September 3rd, 1963. McNamara meets with Pennell to review his report and figure out a way of dealing with Samantha. McNamara is convinced by Pennell's findings and asks how they can destroy her. Pennell implies that destroying Samantha is foolish, and that if there was a way to control her, they could change the world entirely. McNamara agrees and begins his return to the Pentagon for a meeting with the president. When Pennell asks about Broken Arrow, McNamara says he will take it into consideration. October 18th, 1963. Schuster catches Dr. Lehman tampering with the release valves for the 115 gas tanks and confronts him. Lehman tells Schuster that he can't get the little girl's voice out of his head, and he releases the gas upon the Pentagon. Lehman apologizes to Schuster for what he has done and unalives himself. The gas release causes an outbreak to occur in the Pentagon, but Schuster manages to equip the mask in time to avoid turning. The Department of Defense spends the next week containing the Pentagon outbreak. October 28th, 1963. We finally return to the Ultimus crew as they arrive at the Kino facility after their time jump from Darice in 1945. Richtofen knows his journal lies somewhere with the Soviets, as he remembers their agreement to acquire Darice during Operation Staple. The gang spends quite some time at the Kino facility, fending off hordes of the undead and waves of hellhounds sent by Samantha as she tries to thwart their plans. Eventually, Ultimus locates a lunar lander not far from the facility and uses it to travel to the Ascension facility to reacquire Richtofen's journal. Definitely not plot armor or anything, just a lucky find, I guess. With this event being the first occurrence of time travel, rifts in time and space would emerge, which comes to Dr. Monty's attention. As mentioned before in part 1 of the Timeline Explained, this would be when Monty steps in to nudge a few things in the right direction. The main nudge being his assistance with the 4 original 115 elixirs for Group 935 in 1942, with another nudge that I didn't mention before, but I will now because I'm a silly boy, is the addition of chalk outlines of weapons that Dr. Monty would scatter around certain points of interest. Which I'm guessing he did this nudge either just before each outbreak or wherever our crew is at the time. Because you'd reckon there would be scientists and shit noticing these drawings if he did it at the same time as the elixirs. I guess it's just the Blundell trying to explain a game mechanic into the lore, so who knows.
I'm a sucker for medieval castles.
October 29th, 1963. At the Ascension facility, Gersh believes Yuri is not competent enough to continue working on Project Mercury. Due to this, Yuri is removed from the project by Gersh and assigns him to rocket research. Yuri complies, but is not happy chappy to be working on rocket research, as he believes it is beneath him. Yuri steals a key to the Project Mercury lab when no one is looking, and continues his research there during after hours. Strangely, Yuri begins to notice children's toys scattered among the facility. November 1st, 1963. Yuri stumbles upon Richthofen's journal during his secret research sessions. As he reads through it, he begins to hear the voice of Samantha. Soon enough, Yuri becomes completely consumed by her control. She orders him to continue his work on Project Mercury and complete the Gersh device. November 2nd, 1963. The Department of Defense managed to contain the Pentagon outbreak and begin cleaning the facility. Soldiers who were tasked with the containment report 4 unknown intruders leave the facility through one of the teleporters amidst the outbreak. November 3rd, 1963. Due to the recent outbreak at the Kino facility, Robert McNamara assesses Purnell's report on the outbreaks that had occurred from 1945 to the present and reevaluates the Pentagon outbreak. Believing it to originally be a contained affair, he now considers Samantha's involvement with the incident. McNamara makes arrangements for the President of the US and the Prime Minister of Cuba to meet at the Pentagon to discuss an alliance and establishing the Broken Arrow Initiative. November 4th, 1963. Gersh announces the completion of Project Thunder to the Ascension Committee. He also mentions Yuri's recently strange behaviours, reportedly becoming hostile towards other scientists and constantly muttering to himself. Gersh declares Yuri should be removed from the Ascension group entirely. November 5th, 1963. Samantha orders Yuri to trick Gersh into activating the Gersh device. Yuri lures Gersh into the labs, claiming he has perfected the Gersh device. Gersh becomes skeptical, questioning his involvement with the device, despite being removed from the project. Yuri assures him that he won't be disappointed and insists Gersh to activate the device. Upon activating the device, Gersh is consumed by the rift, which traps him within a plane between existence. Samantha orders Yuri to enter the rift, sending him to the Pentagon, before unleashing an outbreak among the facility. Gersh wanders aimlessly through the facility in his altered plane of existence, until he becomes stuck inside a contraption known as the Casimir mechanism. November 6, 1963. With the information from Purnell and the recent outbreak scare, Robert McNamara holds an emergency meeting with US President John F. Kennedy, US Senator Richard Nixon, and Cuban Prime Minister Fidel Castro to discuss a future alliance to stop Samantha.
Sounds like someone breaking in!
Just a storm, Dick. Sit down.
Samantha interrupts their meeting by unleashing an outbreak of the undead among the Pentagon, along with sending a now powerful and corrupted Dr. Yuri to dispose of our political crew. At the same time of the attack on the Pentagon, the Ultimus crew arrive at the Ascension Group Cosmodrome. But Samantha is always 2 steps ahead, and has already caused outbreaks to give our boys some trouble. The crew become aware of Gersh's imprisonment inside the Casimir mechanism, and agree to free him in exchange for Richthofen's journal. After completing a series of objectives, the crew manage to free Gersh from the mechanism. But Gersh does not return in human form, but instead, he emerges as an ethereal cosmic being of unknown power. Richtofen receives his journal and reads that he requires the Vril device for the next step in his plan. Unfortunately, Richtofen realizes he left the device at the Siberian facility before returning to Doris in 1945. As a parting gift, Gersh helps our boys out by teleporting them to the Siberian facility to save them some time. But I guess Gersh must be still getting used to his godly cosmic powers, because he does send them to the facility just 48 years into the future. Also, he teleports them to a part of the facility they can't actually exit out of, so they're pretty much stranded for now. Gersh then leaves Earth to do who knows what, probably to start his Silver Surfer arch or whatever, but nah. Cheers for rendering our boys useless.
There's a light switch. Oh, I think I found a lever. Perhaps this will turn on the light.
Oh, let go. That's not a lever. Richtofen!
On some better news, The events that just took place at the Cosmodrome has swindled Samantha's terror for now, and the outbreak at the Pentagon subdues. The four politicians manage to survive the attack unscathed, and Yuri's powers fade as he is arrested by authorities, now donning the nickname the Pentagon Thief. November 8th, 1963. Yina holds a meeting with the remaining members of the Ascension group who were absent of the facility during the outbreak. Yina informs them that he will be transporting the Apothecon blood to the mysterious stranger at the Siberian facility. Broken Arrow Era. November 19th, 1963. After the big scare of the Pentagon outbreaks, the US government fund and establish the Broken Arrow program to contain future outbreaks. Multiple facilities are built throughout the states, with the two most notable being a repurposed nuclear testing ground in Nevada, referred to as Camp Edward, and an undisclosed facility beneath a rural town near Hanford's site in Washington state, that we will refer to as the Hanford facility. The Groom Lake facility is also merged into Broken Arrow. I would like to quickly mention now that throughout the next few decades, multiple Broken Arrow facilities and POIs would be established in other parts of the world, with the one of most importance being a weapons testing lab in Shanghai, China. Purnell, now the leader of Broken Arrow, is handed Camp Edward to proceed with 115 experiments and to find a way to stop Samantha. Purnell seeks out to construct the US's own pyramid device in hopes they would have a means of defense if Samantha were to attack again. Using the provided documents sourced from Group 935, the American pyramid device is constructed, but Purnell finds difficulty sourcing a means to power the APD, rendering it useless for the time being. November 25th, 1963. Yina assembles a small crew of Soviets to transport the Apothecon blood aboard a cargo ship. In secrecy, Yina arranges a rendezvous with the US to be extracted from the Siberian facility after delivering the blood and return to the States for good. December 16th, 1963. Broken Arrow scientist Dr. Hale is stationed at Camp Edward to produce an army for the US without the threat of an outbreak. Instead of continuing with undead experimentation, Dr. Hale gathers the mannequins of the old test site, modifying them into 115-powered androids she refers to as ADAM units. During the evenings at Camp Edward, Purnell would occasionally hear faint voices calling his name, but Purnell shrugs it off due to the excess use of alcohol. January 1st, 1964. Yina records an entry log as the cargo ship nears the arrival of the Siberian facility. He is interrupted by the sounds of alarms, soon followed by one of the sailors in a complete panic. He informs Yina that the blood has broken out of containment and has begun attacking the guards. Explosions begin to shake the ship, and an outbreak of the undead overrun the remaining crewmen, including Yina. The unpiloted ship manages to make it to the facility, but splits in two upon crashing into the shore. March 31st, 1964. Dr. Hale discovers the immense and replenishing energy emitted by the elemental shard. She begins to use it as the power source for the ADAM units. She documents that the units powered by the shard behave almost as if they're alive when compared to the units only powered by 115. She reports her findings to Purnell, which piques his interest. After conversing for some time, Purnell and Hale hypothesize that unlike Element 115, Elemental Shard could potentially bring the dead back to life, with their soul and mind intact. Dr. Hale plans to perform reanimation tests with the rodents, but Purnell suggests that she waits, as he has a candidate in mind for her. Dr. Hale begins to grow fond of Purnell during their time spent together at Camp Edward. April 2nd, 1964. Purnell contacts Paxton Ridge, an old subordinate from his time as a handler in World War II, to call in a favour. He tells Paxton to travel to the Rising Sun facility, retrieve the body of Peter McCain, and deliver him to Camp Edward. Which is kinda crazy, because wouldn't Peter be nothing but a pile of bones at the very least? after almost 20 years of decomposing? May 11th, 1964. Paxton arrives at Camp Edward and delivers Peter's corpse to Purnell. Before leaving, Paxton tells Purnell no more favours. Purnell and Hale spend the rest of the month conducting tests on Peter's corpse using the elemental shard. June 1st, 1964. During test number 22, Purnell and Hale successfully resurrect Peter with the elemental shard. Hale informs Purnell that she will need to run a few more tests to determine if it is safe to interact directly with Peter. Purnell asks Hale to quarantine him for the time being and to keep this experiment a secret from the CIA and Department of Defense. Undisclosed date, July 1964. After several weeks of testing, Hale reports to Purnell of Peter's progress. She tells him that Peter is returning to his normal self, but struggles with severe memory loss. She states that during the first few weeks, Peter would have constant nightmares of demons attacking humanity, but they have now subsided.
Outcome? Train go boom.
Undisclosed date, August 1964. The Department of Defense contact Purnell and request the elemental shard for experiments at other Broken Arrow facilities. Before handing over the shard, Purnell splits the shard into two pieces, giving one half to the DoD and keeping the other half for himself. Purnell becomes paranoid that the DoD has planted spies among Camp Edward and are turning against him. He confides in Peter and convinces him to swear loyalty to Broken Arrow. Undisclosed date, late August 1964. Officer Weiss, a member of Broken Arrow, is stationed at Camp Edward to assist Dr. Hale with the experiments on the ADAM units. Undisclosed date, September 1964. Years of exposure to 115 and the elemental shard have caught up with Purnell as he begins to hear constant voices of corruption. Night after night, the voices grow louder and louder, demanding that Purnell finds a gateway to Agartha. He thinks about a dream that has been recurring over the last few months, where he merges with the ether. The dreams and voices push Purnell to reapproach the APD. By reading through a copy of Richthofen's journal, Purnell discovers that the original pyramid device sourced its power through consuming life essence. Although having found the solution, Purnell is puzzled on how he will fuel the pyramid without raising suspicion to the DoD.
¿Quieres?
Undisclosed date, late September 1964. Purnell plans an excuse to persuade General Sawyer to approve of powering the APD. He drafts an extension of MK Ultra that he refers to as MK Alpha, which would propose using the APD for interrogation purposes. Undisclosed date, October 1964. Purnell arranges a meeting with General Sawyer to show him the promising potential of MK Alpha. He explains to Sawyer that the APD has the potential to control minds, access their thoughts, and even rewrite their memories. This proposal intrigues Sawyer, believing the APD could revolutionize interrogation tactics. He asks Purnell why it hasn't been activated since its construction. Purnell confesses that the APD is based off the design of the MPD, and that the only known source of power is life essence. Sawyer is disgusted with the idea of sacrificing humans for the APD. He threatens Purnell to find another way or he'll shut down the project before leaving the facility. Undisclosed date, November 1964. During one of Hale's experiments, a shard-powered ADAM unit malfunctions and breaks down next to the APD. To Hale's surprise, a flicker of light is seen leaving the unit and entering the APD's fuel canisters. Hale orders Weiss to retrieve him another unit and calls for Purnell to see their discovery. Purnell watches Weiss dispose of the unit and another flicker of light transfers to the APD. Pleased to have an ethical way of powering the APD, Purnell thanks Hale for saving the project. Purnell contacts Sawyer to inform him that MK Alpha is ready to commence. February 13th to the 20th, 1965. Purnell arranges for Yuri Zawoyski to be transferred to Camp Edward for interrogation. Yuri is forced to enter the now powered APD, where Purnell questions him on his infiltration of the Pentagon. Yuri says that he just did whatever the little girl told him to do, and that is all he knows. Purnell does not believe him and punishes him with the little zappy zap. Yuri confesses that Samantha can see the past, present, and future all at once. This is how she can travel to any point in time and unleash outbreaks. Purnell questions if Samantha is planning an attack on Camp Edward, which Yuri replies, not for a long time. Only after Big Boom will she attack. She tells me, you will be there too, Purnell. This understandably freaks the shit out of Purnell, as he never revealed his identity to Yuri. Purnell ends the first interrogation session. In the second interrogation session, Yuri speaks of many alternate universes, where in each one, 4 men, split in 2, are trapped in an endless cycle, doomed to repeat the same events with no escape. Purnell asks for the names of these men, but Yuri ignores him and begins to ramble on about the Ether and Agatha, which piques Purnell's interests. In the third and final interrogation, Purnell redirects his questions on how to reach Agatha. Yuri lashes at Purnell, telling him that Agatha is not for him or anyone. This angers Purnell, and he gives Yuri a big dose of that zap zap, which almost fries Yuri's brain. Dr. Hale becomes concerned and asks Purnell to halt the interrogation due to Yuri's decreasing vitals. Purnell ignores Hale's warning and continues to question Yuri. Yuri claims that he does not know how to reach Agatha, but tells Purnell that he can feel the corruption inside him and is cursed just like he is. Purnell is furious and zaps Yuri for an uncomfortably long time, killing him in the process. July 11th, 1965. Broken Arrow established an artificial intelligence named Rushmore to oversee and maintain records of the projects carried out at Camp Edward. Undisclosed date, 1966. Purnell has a freaky dream where, while within the APD, he watches 2 angels take his mother away while being electrocuted by the elemental shard. August 3rd, 1967. After all the crazy dreams, exposure to 115, and an obsession with the Ether and Agatha, Purnell begins experimenting on himself with the elemental shard. With the assistance of Dr. Hale, Purnell enters the APD, while Hale transfers the shard's energy to flood the APD. In the process, Purnell lets out a painful cry, scaring Hale into ending the test prematurely. But to Hale's surprise, Purnell emerges from the APD unscathed with a big fat grin. He orders Hale to run the test again. Over the next few months, Purnell and Hale secretly continue these tests, unbeknown to the CIA, DoD, and Rushmore. Purnell's behaviour becomes more erratic and aggressive after each experiment conducted. January 26, 1968. Very late into the night, Officer Weiss witnesses one of Purnell's self-experiments with the APD. He reports his findings to Deputy Director Peter McCain. February 2nd, 1968. After hearing Weiss's report, Peter witnesses one of the experiments himself, unbeknown to Purnell and Dr. Hale. February 4th, 1968. With the evidence gathered, Peter files a report on Purnell to General Sawyer and the Department of Defense. Undisclosed date, late February, 1968. Purnell becomes aware of Peter's betrayal and spikes his drink to have him fall unconscious. Peter awakens hours later, locked in a cell while Purnell carries out his villain monologue. Peter tells Purnell that General Sawyer is already on their way to stop him, but Purnell replies that it won't matter, as by then it will be too late. With Peter locked away, Purnell continues to experiment on himself inside the APD. March 15th, 1968. General Sawyer and his men arrive to Camp Edward. They confront Dr. Hale in the middle of a test on Purnell and order her to shut down the APD. Hale tries to stop them, but they ignore her pleas and turn off the APD. This causes the whole facility to lose power, and Purnell emerges from the APD, no longer resembling his human form. The elemental shard has transformed him into a being of pure energy, known as the Avogadro. General Sawyer and his men open fire on the Avogadro, but it is of no use.
You are just delaying the inevitable.
The Avogadro releases 115 gases upon the facility, unleashing an outbreak of zombies and overrides the ADAM units to kill everyone at the facility. After all of the chaos, the Avogadro returns to the APD. Whether Sawyer and his men manage to lock the Avocado back into the APD, or choosing to lock himself inside, maybe to reach Agatha, it is never confirmed how or why this happens. Another Blundell blunder. It is also never confirmed if Weiss or Dr. Hale survived the incident, but I'm gonna say they all got murdered. Peter McCain, although physically dead, still has his soul intact due to being revived by the elemental shard. His soul wanders throughout the facility until he fuses into a broken ADAM unit, remaining there for a very long time. March 23rd, 1968. Upon discovering the events that occurred at Camp Edward, the CIA and DoD restrict all access to the facility and label it a classified project. A nuke is planted underground near the facility as a safeguard if the Avogadro were to return. September 29th, 1979. Russman begins work as an agent for Broken Arrow to keep tabs on the experiments at the facilities across the United States. April 20th, 1983. At one of the undisclosed Broken Arrow facilities, scientists begin experimentation on an arrangement of animals using the half of the shard acquired from Camp Edward in 1964. The elemental shard mutates the DNA of the test animals, turning them into what the scientists referred to as bios. June 24th, 1986. Russman is sent to the undisclosed facility to review the progress of the bios. During his time there, the bios breach containment and overrun the facility. Russman escapes as the only survivor and reports the incident to Broken Arrow. Just like Camp Edward, they shut down the facility and abandon it entirely. Projects from the facility are transferred to other locations such as the Hanford facility and the Shanghai facility. Modern era. March 17th, 2011. We return to the Siberian facility, where film director George A. Romero is recording scenes for his upcoming movie.
God's sakes, he missed me again! Cut! Are you blind, man? Like this. Ow! Oh! See?
Based on Group 935's zombie experiments during World War II.
I came across some old Nazi documents. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Element 115, necromancers, raising the dead, real creepy stuff.
Unbeknown to George and his film crew, Ultimus were locked in a room somewhere within the facility at the same time, and with Samantha on the hunt for Ultimus, an outbreak of the undead is unleashed upon the facility.
Get back to hair and makeup, you don't look dead enough.
Zombies begin to attack the film crew and kidnap George Romero in the process. Moments later, George emerges from the river, now controlled by Samantha, leaving our 4 cast members, Sarah Michelle Gellar,
Let's slay some stiffs.
Robert Englund,
This is a real nightmare.
Danny Trejo,
We're completely surrounded!
and Michael Rooker
That ain't in the script.
defend off the endless hordes. Sometime after exploring the facility, the cast crew eventually find Ultimus is trapped in a vault. Richtofen calls for their help, to retrieve the Vril device and to power the broken teleporter within the vault. The cast agree to help and set out to complete the task given by Richtofen. Cause honestly, what else are you gonna do in this situation? After restoring power, deactivating the vault's security systems, retrieving some vodka for Nikolai, and last but not least, sacrificing a fella using the VR-11. The cast acquired the Vril device and returned it to Richtofen. As a parting thanks, Richtofen gives the cast a Wonderwaff from within the vault. Reading through his journal, Richtofen finds he needs the focusing stone for the next step in his plan to stop Samantha. Ultimus hop into the MTD and once again teleport through time to Shangri-La in the year 1956. Samantha realizes Ultimus is no longer at the Siberian facility and moves her focus onto Shangri-La. The outbreak at the facility begins to die down and the cast crew start to catch their breath. But strangely, George Romero is never seen again. Anyway, back to the Shang Shang. In their search for the focusing stone, the Ultimus crew managed to activate an eclipse over the village.
Hello out there! Hello!
They begin to hear the voices of two explorers coming from within the labyrinths of the temple, asking for their help to escape. With hopes of finding the stone through freeing the explorers, Ultimus agree to help them. The crew complete a series of puzzles and trials, allowing the explorers to make their way through, eventually reaching the top of the shrine. With only a brick wall between the two groups, Ultimus gives the explorers a stick of dynamite through a hole to open the shrine. The explosion exposes Richtofen's altar at the top of the shrine, and Ultimus collects the focusing stone, fusing it with the Vril device. But the explorers are nowhere to be seen, as the explosion sends them back through the time loop to when they first discovered Shangri-La. Although confused, the Ultimus crew shrug it off and get ready to teleport to the moon to confront Samantha. Now this part is a bit confusing, because it's never explained how or why there is a teleporter at Shangri-La. Some sources say that the MTD at the Siberian facility was some kind of pocket teleporter. But I digress, back to the timeline. Just before Ultimus is about to teleport, Dempsey fires a blast of the 3179JB215 far out at a zombie. This blast overloads the MTD with 115 and the Ultimus crew are set off course. They arrive at the Pentagon in the year 1963, amid the outbreak caused by Dr. Lehman. The crew used the Pentagon's MTD to travel to the Groom Lake facility, where they used the MTD calibrated to the moon by Schuster. Although the MTD successfully takes them to the moon, it also takes them through time once again to the year 2025.
Tokyo needs air. Battery.
Richtofen, at last, begins the final phase for his grand scheme. And we'll get to that shit soon. We just got to talk about the 14 years prior to the event. April 10th, 2025. Yeah, didn't really dive deep into those 14 years, did we?
Liar!
Anyway, at the Hanford facility, Broken Arrow uses 115 to develop another variant of the bios, known as the Denizens. For what reason? No clue. How could this benefit society in any way? July 6, 2025. Project Manager Russman, along with Case Officer George Barkley, arrive at Camp Edward. Their mission is to collect a sample of the entity locked within the APD. Russman links the pyramid to the Hanford Power Station facility, allowing the specimen sample to transfer to Hanford instantly. George mentions to Russman of leaving Broken Arrow for a position at the CDC. July 8th, 2025. The Broken Arrow scientists at the power station facility plan to use the sample transferred from Camp Edward to create a device that could manipulate the weather. In the process, they accidentally create a mindless Avogadro from the sample. The scientists contain the Avogadro into the mechanism to use as a power source, and for further research. September 1st, 2025. Broken Arrow starts to run low on 115 supplies, and they begin to excavate near Camp Edward in a desperate last attempt to resupply. October 13th, 2025. Holy shit, boys, we're finally here.
That's what I'm talking about. This shit means something to me, man.
After researching way too many military conspiracies on ADAM units,
Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the
super intellectual Marlton Johnson sneaks into Camp Edward to prove their existence. While exploring the facility, Marlton comes to the conclusion that the conspiracies are indeed true. As although being abandoned for over 60 years, the ADAM units have kept the facility in pristine condition. During the same time Marlton explores Camp Edward, not far from the facility is our homie Dr. Schuster, excavating 115 supplies. And someone is definitely getting fired at Broken Arrow.
Pack your things. Get out of my building.
I was just
You're fired!
Because Schuster mistakenly sets off the nuke that was put in place for Purnell 60 years ago. This causes a 115-induced nuclear explosion, decimating the area and most of Camp Edward. Luckily, Marlton manages to hide within one of the bunkers built when the facility was a nuclear test site. Marlton puts out a distress signal from the bunker, which the CIA and CDC receive and send agents out to investigate. Upon arriving at the facility, both factions are ambushed by hordes of the undead, caused by the immense amount of 115 in the area. Forced to work together,
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
the CDC and CIA fight for their survival. Alright, time for the juicy stuff. At the same time as the nuclear explosion, Ultimus arrives at Griffin Station, ready to enact Richtofan's plan. The crew carry out the last few tasks to bring Samantha out of the MPD, while Richtofan charges the Vril device. Eventually, Sam emerges from the MPD, and Richtofan places the Vril device into the pyramid. This causes the MPD to swap the bodies of Samantha and Richtofan. Richtofan now has the power of the Dark Ether and controls the undead, changing the eye colour of the zombies to blue. And Samantha now has the power of a man in his mid-40s. Would you make that deal?
I'll make that deal. How about you, Udovich? You make that deal?
I'd make that deal.
I don't blame you. Damn good deal.
The rest of the Ultimus crew, completely bamboozled, hear the voice of Maxis, calling for help from the technology of Griffin Station, claiming he can minimize the damage that Richtofan will cause. Ultimus agree to help, and through a very serious game of Simon Says, Maxis gains full control of Griffin Station.
I have finished the calculations. Launch protocol initiated. Launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In an act of revenge, Maxis launches a fleet of 115 infused rockets towards Earth, hoping to weaken Richtofan's connection to the ether through the destruction of Earth itself. Dempsey, Takeo, Nikolai, and Sam helplessly watch their home crumble before their eyes. Although having his link to the ether weakened, Richtofan still has influence on the undead, unleashing a zombie apocalypse among the shattered Earth. Due to later events that will be explained soon, Samantha's soul is mysteriously plucked from Richtofan's body and vanishes from existence. Richtofan's body is left in some kind of comatose, having normal bodily functions but no brain activity. Ultimus uses the MTD to return to Earth, but once again, the MTD malfunctions and sends them through time once again. They arrive at the Groom Lake facility in 1963, where Schuster and Purnell are conducting the first MTD calibrations for the moon. But the teleportation has seriously fried the brains of Ultimus, putting them in a catatonic state. Purnell and Schuster recognize Dempsey and Richtofen, but due to the state that they are in, they have no ability to communicate. Puzzled on what to do, Purnell locks them within one of the hangars to be assessed. The Ultimus crew would be stuck there until another event comes into play. Returning to the year 2025, temporal rifts trigger from the Earth's fractures. Purgatory Point is teleported underneath the mining facility in Angola, and Arthur is taken to the now buried town. With one of the rockets colliding with Camp Edward, the facility is decimated, with Marlton being the only survivor. At some point, Marlton escapes the aftermath and is left to roam the wastelands. Apocalyptic Era. November 5th, 2025. With the chaos unraveling on Earth, Broken Arrow disbands. In an effort to cover up any involvement with 115, members of the program set fire to the primary facility, destroying all evidence. Russman's lifetime of exposure to 115 causes his mental state to severely suffer. He begins to wander the Earth, forgetting his past life. March 18th, 2027. Former CDC member George Barclay makes a public announcement that Element 115 is now airborne and severely contagious. He warns any listeners to be cautious of anyone showing signs of delusion, paranoia, or short-term memory loss. March 27th, 2027. With food becoming scarce, some survivors begin to eat the flesh of the undead. A society of these freaky survivors form, calling themselves the Flesh. May 12th, 2027. Samuel J. Stuhlinger seeks refuge with the Flesh, eventually giving in and joining their society and way of life. June 28th, 2027. The 115 in the undead consumed by the Flesh loosely connects them to the ether, and they begin to hear the voice of Richtofen. He demands them to construct polarization devices across the world, which would reconnect them to the ether. At the same time, Maxis communicates to survivors around the world through electrical devices, also asking them to build the polarization devices, implying that it would fix the state of the Earth. But secretly, Maxis has his own intentions with the devices. April 4th, 2028. The Flesh send a transmission worldwide, asking those listening that they are the future and to join their cause. December 9th, 2028. The followers of Maxis begin constructing the first polarization device near the Hanford site facility. January 3rd, 2029. Followers of Maxis begin to distrust him, believing he isn't being honest with his intentions. In retaliation, the followers destroy all their electronics. March 2nd, 2029. The Flesh begins to grow in numbers, and the voice of Richtofen becomes stronger. The Maxis faction attempt to contact him again, anxiously waiting for further instructions. August 15th, 2029. A great battle breaks out between the Flesh and the followers of Maxis at Hanford site. The fighting attracts the attention of the undead, and both factions are overwhelmed by the hordes. Only a few survivors manage to flee the massacre, with Stuhlinger being one of them. With no one alive within the Green Run area, Maxis and Richtofen are left in a stalemate. They both wait for new survivors to arrive and finish the first polarization device. October 13th, 2035. after stealing an ADAM-operated bus from a Broken Arrow facility. Russman runs into Stuhlinger at the bus depot in Hanford's sight. Taking pity on Stuhlinger, Russman invites him aboard the party bus. October 21st, 2035. It's not specifically mentioned when, but sometime within the last 10 years, Marlton Johnson crosses paths with a woman named Abigail Misty Bryant amidst the apocalypse. The two decide to stick together as a duo, eventually becoming companions. Coming back to the current day, Marlton and Misty hold out against a horde of zombies in a highway diner near Hanford's site. Just as the defences begin to cave, Russman and Stuhlinger arrive on a bus and save them from their demise.
Please display courtesy to the automatic driver.
After the Great Escape, the four survivors hear the voice of Max's coming from the electrical devices within the bus. He convinces them to construct the polarization device for the benefit of mankind. At the same time, Stuhlinger hears the voice of Richtofen.
Excuse me, just getting used to the ether.
As he is the only survivor among the four, having consumed undead flesh. Richtofen commands Stuhlinger to convince the other three to build a device for him instead. The rest of the group distrust Stuhlinger's idea, believing he's lost the plot, and they side with Max's plan. The group travel to the Hanford Power Station facility and awaken the mindless Avogadro. Eventually, they lead the Avogadro underneath the polarization device, killing him with EMP grenades by Max's request. The Avogadro's death charges the pylon, and the first polarization device is complete. The four survivors now know their mission and will be referred to as victors from here forward. October 22nd, 2035. Although a bit pissy from losing the first P device, Richtofen still has hope that the Victus crew will change their minds and follow his plan. Richtofen teleports them across the world from the Hanford site to the Broken Arrow facility in Shanghai, China. Although Shanghai is now collided with Province 22 due to the 115 rockets from Griffin Station in 2025. Stuhlinger is conflicted with whose plan to follow through with, but Richtofen reminds him of his history with the flesh, threatening to tell the others of his secret if he doesn't help him. Stuhlinger tries to convince the rest of Victus to build a device for the voice in his head, but again, they write him off as crazy and continue with Max's plan. Victus carry out the tasks instructed by Maxis, eventually activating the P device in his favour. For some unknown reason, both the voices of Richtofen and Maxis seem to stop communicating with Victus. Confused on what to do next, the crew begin to travel to Earth, hoping to hear from the voices once more. December 31st, 2035. After months of travelling, Victus locate the third P device atop of a mining facility in Angola. Shortly after, the voices of Richtofen and Maxis return, demanding they enter the mines and activate the final P device. Embarking into the mines, Victus discover an old western town buried beneath the mining facility. They find a traumatized giant man locked in a cell and free him from his confinement. Although unable to communicate with Victus, the giant offers his assistance in return for booze or candy. Maxis and Richtofen tell the crew they will need a conduit to power the P device. Maxis asks them to build a gallows, whereas Richtofen asks Stuhlinger to build a guillotine. With the majority of Victus being certified haters of the supposed voice in Stuhlinger's head, they go forth with Maxis' plan. After giving Arthur a sugar rush, deciphering codes, dinging bells, and shooting down targets, Victus powered the final P device in Maxis' favour. Maxis is given full control over the MPD, becoming corrupted by the Dark Ether. With his newfound power, Maxis reveals to Victus his true intentions and carries out a few long-awaited goals. First, Maxis removes Richtofan's soul from Samantha's body within the MPD, putting him inside one of the undead of Purgatory Point. Second, Maxis retrieves Samantha's soul from Richtofan's body in 2025, sending her to Agartha. And third, Maxis confesses to Victus that they and the entire world will perish with the opening of Agartha. Through entering Agartha, Samantha witnesses the evil that has plagued her father. She discovers a rift to another dimension and reaches out to that timeline's Maxis to help.
Please, you have to help me. I'm trapped here. I just want to go home.
January 10th, 2036. The now zombified Richtofan is approached by a figure exiting a rift. He asked undead Richtofan to collect blood samples of Victus, and in return, he will reunite his soul with his body. January 19th, 2036. Stuhlinger begins to hear a new voice similar to that of Richtofan's. He offers him and the rest of Victus an escape from their collapsing Earth. With undead Richtofan in their pursuit, they accept his offer, entering a rift that exits them from this universe. Shortly after, another rift opens for undead Richtofan. The Earth itself is destroyed by Maxis, marking an end to the original timeline. Boom! That's Black Ops 1 and 2 done and dusted. I'm getting straight into part 3. I'll see you lads then. Ciao. Hello. Post-production I can explain here. I thought it would be cool to have the runtime of the video reach an hour and 15 minutes. But I got nothing else to really say. So here's that meme of Richtofan dancing with some music I made for however long is left. Enjoy.